When the biggest winter storm in nearly 6 years took aim on southern Maryland, you knew who to turn to. JB Weather was with you before the storm to give you early warning of its potential.
I've been tracking the latest developments with our mid-season winter storm, and we could be looking at bands of more moderate to heavy snow centered here on southern Maryland.
During the storm, with unparalleled live local coverage.
Forecaster John Bordash here with you, reporting live from Prince Frederick in Calvert County. That is likely producing upwards of 2 to 4 inches of snow per hour. But we are looking at high snow totals across the region. We have high impacts on our roadways, and we are looking at increasing power outage numbers across the region.
And after the storm, to cover its historic aftermath.
Right now, we are sitting at right around 41,000 customers without power. Here's a look at that updated threat timeline I produced for you right around noon today. We will have travel impacts tomorrow. That black ice will be around. We are looking at a widespread black ice event this morning across the region.
Your hometown weather forecaster is there to guide you through any storm, working to keep you and your family safe. Get updates on air, online, and on social media for local coverage Southern Maryland can count on. From Southern Maryland's weather leader, this is a JB Weather Report.
Good evening, I'm forecaster John Bordash with you in the JB Weather Center this evening to give you my 10th annual winter forecast for the winter 2022 to 2023. It's a bit crazy to think that we're already at my 10th winter outlook since I started publishing these professionally. But much like the other 9 winters, I think we have a winter that's going to offer us a lot of twists and turns, and it's going to keep things interesting. So I don't want to waste no time. Let's get right into it. When we take a look at my last 9 winter outlooks, how did they do? Well, I put together this chart to help analyze this. I used data from DC's Reagan National Airport, which is our closest official reporting site. This chart shows how much snow I predicted at DC's Reagan National for that winter, how much actually fell, and then I color-coded each item based on whether or not that was an above or a below average value. Average snowfall at DC's Reagan National is 13.8 inches. And when we take a look at things, 6 out of my 9 winter outlooks by and large were correct. Now, it's very difficult to forecast the exact snow total 4 months out for any one location. So what I'm looking at here is if the general themes were correct. If I forecasted an above average snowfall, did we see above average snow? And in 6 out of 9 winters, we saw the general theme get realized, and my forecast was rather close. Now, there were 3 winters where that wasn't the case, most noticeably and most recently last winter. I forecasted 5 to 10 inches of snow, and we only saw 13.2 inches of snow. Now, the vast majority of that came from one system. You might remember this. This was January 3rd, 2022. We saw a last-minute storm form and dump between 10 to 15 inches of snow on southern Maryland. 6.7 inches fell in DC, which is about half of their seasonal snowfall. But in our region, this accounted for much of the snow we saw last winter, this one storm. We saw snowfall for 12 hours, it was heavy, and we saw high winds. This storm brought high impacts to the region. We saw 24 to 36 hour backups on I-95. We saw high regional impacts from power outages that lasted for several days because of that heavy snow and those strong winds. You might be asking, JB, are we going to see the same thing this winter? Well, let's talk about it. The first thing we need to look at when forecasting what we're going to see here in the winter is taking a look at the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. Believe it or not, the makeup of these sea surface temperatures in the Pacific greatly impact North American winters. The biggest driver of this is the equatorial Pacific waters. Are they cool or are they warm? Right now, the equatorial Pacific waters are cooler than average. We refer to this as La Nina. If they were warmer than average, we'd call that El Nino. This presence of La Nina is the 3rd straight year it's been around. So what does a La Nina winter typically lead to here in the Mid-Atlantic? Let's take a look, and I'm going to take my face out of here to help you see. Over the last 30 winters, this is how much snow we've seen. Each bar is colored by the type of La Nina or El Nino we saw. Blue colors are La Nina winters, orange colors are El Nino winters, gray colors mean we didn't have the presence of either La Nina or La Nino. You might see, just taking a quick glance, the vast majority of our average to above average snow seasons were brought during an El Nino winter, or the vast majority of our average to below average snow seasons were brought during a La Nina winter. We're in a La Nina for the third straight year this winter, but the La Nina is weakening. When we see La Nina winters, what do we typically see? This is the typical pattern. We are normally only talking about one jet stream to the north. This jet stream will help to keep the cold air to the north and west across parts of Canada and the northwest US. This can lead to wetter than average conditions in the Pacific Northwest and across the Great Lakes, and warm and dry conditions across the south that can creep here into the mid-Atlantic. Now, I don't think this is going to be a typical La Nina. Our La Nina is weakening. We will likely get our La Nina back up to a neutral phase by the second half of the winter, which within itself will bring issues trying to forecast this winter. The second thing we're going to be looking at is the presence of a positive PNA. These are warmer than average water temperatures just off the west coast of the United States. All you need to know is that the presence of this positive PNA can lead to colder and snowier conditions here along the east coast. So what do I think we're going to see this winter? The first half of the winter, I think we largely are only dealing with one jet stream. This jet stream to the north will help to bring cold and snowy conditions across the northern tier of the continent. Now, the presence of that positive PNA could allow this jet stream, especially in November and December, to dip to the south and bring frequent outbreaks of cold and potentially snowy weather to the east coast. On the flip side, warm and dry conditions are likely across the southern U.S. Now, that La Nina is likely to fade away into a neutral state as we see sea surface temperatures begin to warm. What this will mean is that we will start to introduce a southern subtropical jet stream into the picture. This southern jet stream will help to promote subtropical systems that will move right along the southern U.S. This will help to promote wetter than average conditions across the southern U.S. during the second half of the winter. If we can have one of these southern jet stream storms time up just perfectly with the cold air to the north, we could be talking about a pretty decent snowstorm across our region, but it remains to be seen if that's going to happen yet. Here's what I expect this winter. I think we're talking about below average temperatures across the northern tier of the U.S., where that cold air is the most likely to stay present through the entire winter. Above average temperatures are likely across the southern U.S., where that northern jet stream just likely isn't to get far enough to the south. In our region, I think we're kind of in the middle. We're within a degree or two of average, which is going to feel a little bit colder than the past few winters. But again, I think we're right around average here in our region. When we talk about precipitation, I think we're looking at above average precipitation across the Pacific Northwest and the Great Lakes, where we see frequent storms move through those regions thanks to the northern jet stream. The southern U.S., that forecast is really dependent on how quickly that subtropical southern jet stream gets its act together. But by and large, I would expect below average precipitation for the southern U.S. Our region, again, it's kind of 50-50. What do we see? Right now, I'd expect near average precipitation with just above average precipitation for the mountains, thanks to that northwesterly flow. This winter, I think we see three predominant storm types. The first, and I call these my 3 Cs, the first are the clippers. These are fast-moving, weak systems that clip areas of the northern U.S. as they move out of Canada and head out to sea. These typically only bring 1 to 4 inches of light snow to these northern regions, and in our region, we maybe see a coating to an inch out of these. These aren't big snow producers and largely favor areas to our north and west. The second type of system I think we'll see this winter is called a cutter. So we have clippers and we have cutters. These are going to be systems that develop out to our west and cut or track just to our west. These systems bring high snow totals to areas like the Midwest. Now, as these storm systems track right up along the Appalachian Mountains, we typically will see ice in the mountains and along the East Coast, along with some rain. I think the presence of this storm track is going to be very numerous this year, and this is going to lead to an increased risk of icing in our region. The third type of system we will see, we have clippers, cutters, and we have coastals. These are southern systems that ride along that southern subtropical jet stream with enough cold air in place. This can lead to snow for the mid-Atlantic and East Coast. Now, for our region, it really depends on how close to the coast these systems come. Too far to the west, too close to the coast will lead to rain-snow line issues, but general rule of thumb is that these do bring us some of our biggest snowstorms. I don't think we'll see a lot of these coastal systems, but we likely will see at least 1 or 2, I think, as we get into the second half of the winter. By and large, when we talk about snowfall, I think it's looking above average for the Great Lakes, where cold and snow are the most likely all winter, with below average snow across the southern and southwestern U.S., where that southern subtropical jet stream might not get going until much later into the winter. Our region, again, it's a little bit difficult to say. I think we'll be near average. We know La Nina winters typically favor below average snowfall, But I think since we'll have plentiful cold, especially to start the season, and we'll have the development of a southern subtropical jet stream by the end of the winter, we should be able to see a few snowstorms that push us to average. Now, what does average look like? Let me take my picture out here for a second. Typically, in the winter, we see between 12 and 16 inches of snow here in southern Maryland. Down to our south and east, as you might expect, we see less, closer to 8 inches for the beaches. Northwest of DC, we see closer to 2 feet, with areas out in the mountains seeing upwards of 50 to 100 inches of snow, especially on out towards Oakland and Davis, where they see well over 100 inches of snow each winter. This winter, I would expect these amounts to stay pretty much the same. These totals will look a lot like what we saw last winter, but I don't think it comes all at once. I think it comes from a few different systems. In southern Maryland and in DC, I expect between 10 to 15 inches of snow. Areas north and west will see more, but that's still right around average for them, around 20 inches or so. And I think back out towards the mountains, they might actually see above average snowfall, thanks to those cutters and clippers that will be moving through that could bring between 100 and 200 inches of snow this winter. These numbers look a lot like this past winter, but again, we get it a little bit differently. We have several different systems. So here's what I would expect, putting it all together in one graphic. About the same amount of snow as last year, but it doesn't come with just one storm. I think we see a few systems bring us small amounts, maybe 1 to 2 inches, with one bigger system as we get towards the middle to later portions of the winter in January and February. I think we have the increased risk of seeing ice this winter, especially thanks to that cutter system that's going to be so famous for this winter. And I think this winter will feel colder than it did last winter, but temperatures are still right around average. Just compared to last winter, it's going to feel colder. I think winter gets off to a quicker start this year. We likely see our first flakes before Christmas. I think we see frequent bouts of cold and snow in December and in the beginning of January, with things moderating in February, but we could still see one bigger snowstorm by February and March. Now, how many snow days are we going to see this winter? I would expect, by and large, 4 to 6 snow days this winter for our area school systems. This doesn't take into account virtual learning. This is just the general, will the school building be closed? I think it'll happen 4 to 6 times this winter with a couple smaller snowstorms, maybe one bigger one, and maybe 1 or 2 ice storms. I think it's going to be a busy winter, and you're going to want to stay tuned to JB Weather for the latest information. You can always get my updates online, and you can always check out jbweather.net for the latest. I'm looking forward to another winter of dependable and accurate forecasts here at JB Weather to help keep you and your family safe and ahead of any storm that forms. Keep it tuned to JB Weather for the latest. I'm forecaster John Bordash. Have a nice and safe one.